Welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and I'm here with a recurring guest, Derek Lindow, and we're going to talk about the Civil War, right?
Yeah, sounds good to me. That's what I like to talk about.
More importantly, though, Sue Mundy, the woman known as Sue Mundy. And I'll try to make sure I don't say Sue Mundy. It always, that A wants to get in there. It's Sue Mundy. And if I'm not mistaken, the way I hear it is like whenever they first typed out the first article about Sue Mundy, they just accidentally left out the A and it actually become Mundy. But don't quote me on that. That's just what I've heard.
Yeah, it's interesting thing about how Sue was created there by George Prentice of the Louisville newspaper editor. But yeah, he I think the very first time that he makes a story about Sue Mundy is it does have the A in there, but just once. And every story after that, there is no A. So I don't know if that A was an accidental thing or
well, probably that's probably the truth. And the first A probably was an accident. Surely he didn't mess up, hundreds of more times and leave that out. But kind of the thought is where to begin with Sue Mundy and what Sue Mundy even came from or began. And to set the stage, we kind of got to talk about what happened or what was happening in Kentucky during the time of Sue Mundy. So we're looking at 1684. I messed that up. 1864. 1864. Kind of the close of the Civil War, I guess. And before I'll ask you this question. When, in your opinion, when was the Civil War finally starting to come to an end? Like when was the final, not the final battle, but the writing on the wall battle? It's like, this is not lasting, or this ain't happening.
Yeah, so that's something I could probably talk about all day right there. From the very beginning and show you the string that unravels, everything. But in my opinion, about 1864, at least the end of 1864, after Lincoln gets elected, I feel like there's that's it. Yeah, they're done, especially after Atlanta falls. By this point, Sherman is by Christmas he's at Savannah, and then after that he's moving up through South Carolina into North Carolina and just wrecking everything. And the Confederate Army of the Tennessee is Army of Tennessee is just gets destroyed after the Battle of Nashville. It got wrecked at Franklin. A few weeks later at Nashville, it just George Thomas's little makeshift army there just almost annihilates it. I mean, enough get away, but I mean the AOT after that is just really a shell of its former self. And so I feel like that kind of just shows that there's really no path to victory after that point. Maybe some sort of, I think what they're hoping for in the Eastern Theater too at Petersburg is just get some sort of peace deal, and you kind of get a glimpse of that if you see the movie Lincoln. That's kind of some of the behind the scenes negotiations going on, which don't work. But the Confederates know that by this point, they can't really win on the battlefield. They're going to have to make some sort of political win. Just get to the point where the Northern people are sick of the war and they just want it to stop, and really getting to the point where they don't have to win, they just can't lose anymore. If that makes sense. So that doesn't work either. But to me, just that was a really long answer to your question there. But
that's all fine.
By the end of 1864, we have the benefit of hindsight, but I don't know how you can be a Confederate sympathizer or a Confederate and think we still got a shot at this. That's just me though.
To quote Dumb and Dumber, Jim Carrey. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah.
That pretty much paints a pretty good picture of where we're at here, because Sue Mundy kind of steps into play towards the middle end of 1864, and that's kind of what's going on. And this happens, of course, in Kentucky, more so. Yeah, I was about to say Western, but not Western as in Ballard County, but as in Midwestern, is that a proper
Yeah,
term for
yeah.
Kentucky?
So I feel like, this is something that's taking place in, from central Kentucky towards the west.
Hmm.
Like that whole area just blows up with the sort of guerrilla warfare that, what we were talking about before we started recording here was, with my book, it's on 1862 guerrilla and partisan warfare in Western Kentucky, and that guerrilla partisan warfare in 1864, just 2 years later, we were talking about how much different that was, and just how much more brutal it was, and yeah, it's a different world than what Kentucky was probably used to in the years before that. It's on a different scale. It's probably not as large of a scale, but on a more brutal scale where people are willing to murder each other. And
Hmm.
one of the articles I've read says that it's more like the war is localized in so many areas where you just get these people going at each other's throats, and it becomes personal, and it's not your typical warfare. It's these aren't the armies. You do have some legitimate soldiers out there, but you don't have thousands of men, marching around or riding around to bring order to this place. And it's
You
it's
basically have like gangs of 5, 10.
yeah, there's a
So
bunch of different sizes. Yeah, so several of them are sometimes just 3 guys. Other times might be about 50 or so. And one of the things is, when they're just so small like that, they're really hard to find,
yeah,
and it's really hard to hide when you're a small group. And so that's one reason why the Union has such a hard time putting these guys down, is the fact that it's easy to hide, and there's a lot of people willing to hide them too, which is a big problem. So
yeah, yeah, and we'll talk about some more of that here in a little bit as well, as far as hiding the guerrillas. But the guerrilla warfare is going on, and they're raiding Union lines, supplies, just trying to, well, like you said, causing havoc.
mhm.
And the Union is desperately trying to get this under control, because, of course, in any military setting or any war, you want your supplies to be safe, because their
Right.
supplies are helping your troops and keeping that battle going, even if the battle is looking, well, victory is in sight for the Union, I guess, at this time, and they don't want to mess this up. So, what does the Union do? Oh, Abe sends in the butcher,
Yeah,
and I guess he makes a name for himself, definitely in Kentucky.
he sure does. Yeah. Stephen Burbridge. I even have a hard time saying that name, but it's that's a name that has basically been a bad word. I feel like, especially for Kentuckians, even though he is a Kentuckian, it's like it'd be like, in a way, if you know Kentucky's number one high school basketball player went and played for Duke or something.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
almost like the thing there. But
Or if they sent Christian Laettner, to Kentucky to be the
oh yeah,
lieutenant governor or something like
oh yeah,
that.
gosh, that would be terrible. Yeah, so yeah, they send him in, and uh, there's I'm trying to be very balanced here with Burbridge, but
Mhm.
he there is actually a new book that's coming out on him here in a few months, I think, maybe next year. It's I can't remember the press and I can't remember the author, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it's going to open our eyes a lot to what the things that Burbridge was dealing with. And um, he was like, something I didn't really realize until recently is just how young he was, being really the military dictator, I guess, for a better word, of Kentucky. He was only, I think he was like 32.
Wow.
I mean, I did not know he was that young. And he doesn't have a background that's suited for this. He starts off the war commanding the 26th Kentucky Infantry. They're actually stationed in this area, made up of a lot of guys from Davis County here in Owensboro. Had a few ancestors in that regiment, and that regiment fights at Shiloh and then the Corinth campaign. And Burbridge wasn't there at Shiloh. I don't really know where he was at that point. haven't really looked into it that much, but I know he wasn't commanding there. His lieutenant colonel was. But he was a farmer before the war, and so I don't know why he was selected for this. I don't know, some sort of political handling happened that stuck him up there, but
Well, and maybe Lincoln was thinking, he's from Kentucky, they'll accept him, open arms.
yeah, and that didn't quite happen.
No. Yeah, so he starts, and he's not accepted really at all, because he starts putting in these orders, and there's a reason he's called the Butcher, and the reason for it is because he's having people killed left and right, and I don't know. Hopefully, the book, because the book sounds very interesting and would be a good read for sure. But I'm trying to find these orders here that he put down, but basically it just went down. Order 59, and the order goes as follows: if a Union man was killed, then 4 Confederate guerrilla prisoners were to be shot. With this order, more than 50 executions were enforced, and through these orders, that's how he got his name of the Butcher. Then he extended the order again, saying that any rebel sympathizer within 5 miles of a guerrilla attack could be arrested and banished. And I assume that means banished from Kentucky.
Right.
I mean, that is extreme.
Yeah.
Trying to think of that, something like nowadays that could happen, how that could happen to you. But that's pretty extreme, because even if you were a Confederate sympathizer, you could possibly go to jail or be banished just because something happened within 5 miles.
Oh, right. Yeah. Actually, that actual thing happened to one of my ancestors, my 4 times great grandfather.
Wow.
His son was in the Confederate Army, so I think he got labeled as a Confederate sympathizer. He was from Union County, which was a heavily Union county. I don't know what the heck he was doing, but he was arrested as a possible guerrilla. I really don't think he was. He was in his late 40s by then. And so one thing I found in his file was all these letters that people had written on his behalf, neighbors, and because he got arrested for being a possible rebel sympathizer or guerrilla, because he was apparently he got liquored up and started spewing off some anti-union stuff.
That'll get you.
Yeah, and so that got him arrested. He got sent to Bowling Green, and then he got transferred to Louisville and to the military prison there. And so in a lot of these letters, they're saying he's a good man, he's not dangerous, he's not a guerrilla. He just says things he shouldn't say when he gets under the influence of spirituous liquors. So, some other guy said, yeah, he's been known to just wander around miles from his house with just the bottle and be totally lost, not knowing where he's at. Man, that's the genes, and
those are nice ways of saying don't listen to him while he's drunk.
Yeah, I think so. And so he did not, thankfully for me, he did not get he was not one of the guys that had to draw straws to see if he was going to be shot. So that was the thing about that. Yeah. So another story about that that really set the people off here in the Davis County area. There was an event in Henderson, which is just due west of us. It's the next county over. And in Henderson, a Union man was robbed and was shot in the process. And I think he was mortally wounded. And, everyone kind of knew, okay, there's a Union man, which was probably shot by a guerrilla here. And, that means 4 people are going to get shot. And they arrested 2 guys that were from our area, the western part of my county, really close to Henderson County, the Green River area there. And they were pretty young, and their names escape me off the top of my head right now, but they're buried here in our county, and there's a tablet, right there at their grave. But they were probably not guerrillas. I think they were either former Confederate soldiers who had just gone home. They'd been captured and paroled and were sent home, or maybe they were trying to go join a Confederate outfit or something like that. But they had nothing to do with this shooting. And so they got rounded up, and I think they got taken to Louisville, and they were shot, and then they were sent back to Davis County where they were buried. Even though the guy that originally got shot had written on their behalf saying he did not want this to happen to them, that he did not want anybody else to die, because he'd been shot here. And but the order was carried out anyway. And so, in this area, that's why Burbridge was not well liked, because and these guys were really young. I think one was like 17, other one was like 20. These guys were, they were basically kids.
Yeah.
So that really set off, this part of the region against him for that.
Yeah, and which things got even a little bit worse. He finally extended it out and went as far as saying that if a Confederate guerrilla could be shot on sight, so pretty much given a license to kill if you saw a Confederate guerrilla.
And that was that was a big problem, because for a lot of Confederate raiders or partisan rangers, they were actually legitimate Confederate soldiers, and under this order, these regular Confederate soldiers who should be in a time of war, both sides are supposed to treat them as prisoners of war. You could take these guys and say, no, they're guerrillas, and shoot them on sight, or there's no trial, there's no attorney for you or anything like that. It's either you can be shot on spot, or you're going to be taken to a military prison where there is the really good chance that you might be shot anyway. So that's something that also is going to upset a lot of people, because that really blurs the lines in a lot of circumstances. And just like, with my ancestor, that's a guy that was most likely, I don't think he was a guerrilla, but if he was a bad one. And, pretty good at it. But you could have a lot of just innocent people rounded up and potentially shot just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you don't want to be the young man that's of military age out hunting, and you're going home from a hunt, and then they catch you with a gun, and you're a guerrilla, and then you get shot. You didn't want to have that happen to you. And it's just, in a state that remained loyal, I really think it was a bad move, and it inflamed the situation even worse. And I really think it helped push Kentucky, not really towards the Confederates, but away from being loyal Unionists in a way. And I think you see that with George Prentice, the little newspaper editor, that he's a staunchly Unionist guy, originally from Connecticut, I think.
Yeah.
He's a New England Yankee. Starts that paper in Louisville. His sons joined the Confederate Army.
Yep.
And staunchly Unionist. One of his sons actually gets killed with Basil Duke up around Augusta, and he's still a strong Union man, and he was a Whig too, which was crazy political. But it's hating the Lincoln administration because of this stuff, and is trying to is actually teaming up with the Kentucky Democrats, which for a former Whig and a Democrat to
get together there.
That's saying something there. So it was. I think it really lends to that phrase that everyone I think's probably heard, where it says that Kentucky didn't secede until after the war. Something like that. And I think it really comes from this time period. You've had thousands of men fighting in the Union Army, and then this happens to your home. I don't think it's going to make people very happy. No. And Burbridge was a big part of that. I guess, breaking pushing Kentucky, towards towards the South, or towards the Confederate, not to say ideology or anything like that, but the Confederate side of things. But did you know that Burbridge also, on top of all this, he was involved also in the Great Hog Swindle of 1864? I did not know that.
Well, so for some reason, he makes this order that kind of prohibits the shipment of hogs out of the state unless you had a permit, and any surplus hogs or Kentucky hogs had to be sold to the U.S. government. Lincoln finally actually stepped in and opened the hog market back up, but the farmers were protesting, and they said this cost them over like $300,000. But anyway, that's a
Yes, yeah. So that actually got me thinking too. Burbridge, not only did he do this stuff with every time a Union man gets killed or executed for Confederate guerrillas, he also is meddling a lot, I think, in politics of the state. Governor Bramlett, who is former colonel of the 3rd Kentucky Infantry, Union colonel, he's governor by this point. I think both of them butt heads quite a bit because Burbridge pretty much bypasses the Kentucky Assembly and Kentucky governor and requires that every county start levying a tax in order to pay for a full company of home guards to be, I guess, on duty at all times in every single county. Mm-hmm. And Bramlett, he's not happy about that, having his authority. That's taxing, that's a civil government thing. And so he's telling all the counties, ignore that, don't do it, even though he's a Union man. Yeah. And it's and I think Burbridge also was arresting some political enemies, whether they were Confederate or not, or sympathizers or not. I think just political enemy is a good excuse to get rid of some people.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think he did that. And here in Owensboro, our newspaper was very pro-union, very anti-abolitionist. And so, it's that newspaper, the Owensboro Monitor, I feel like is a good example of Kentucky. It's not abolitionist at all, really, but very pro-union at the same time. And that newspaper starts getting a little too critical of things, and it gets shut down. And the editor at the time, he's one of those guys that we talked about earlier, gets banished. He gets banished to Confederate lines. They transfer him and drop him off and say, see ya. And eventually, has to make his way back to Kentucky. And so the newspaper, if you are trying to research the Owensboro newspaper, there is a gap in 1864 where there are no issues, and it's because he got shipped.
They shipped him out, man. Yeah. Needless to say, Burbridge has created this. Even though he was sent to Kentucky to kind of fix it, he has created this, vacuum of just, mayhem. Really, what he was sent to put away, he has poured fuel onto the fire, and it becomes what creates Sue Mundy. And you mentioned this before, but George Prentice, the editor of the Louisville Journal, he begins publishing articles about Sue Mundy and her Confederate guerrillas. And there's plenty of out there. Again, I wish I could go and read all of the Louisville Journal's old newspapers, but they're not digitized, so they're a little harder to get to and all that. But with many newspapers, say one newspaper writes an article, well, that newspaper is then sent to, or that article is then sent to multiple newspapers. So there are a few of these articles here that I've found that are, I guess, quoting the Louisville Journal or are from the Louisville Journal, just printed in a different paper. But anyway, so Sue Mundy, wild woman. So the first one I've got here is from the Wyandotte Pioneer, and it was in January 25th, 1865. And do bear with me while I read some of this. It is, these good old newspapers, but for the most part, you can see it pretty well. So it starts out with Thursday last, Captain McCormick and Surgeon Schreck. I'm going to say that. I don't know if that's correct, but that's what it looks like. Of the 7th Pennsylvania Cavalry left camp at Bardstown for the purpose of visiting the family of Mr. Grigsby, 1.5 miles from the town. While the two gentlemen were sitting in Mr. Grigsby's parlor conversing with the ladies, they were surprised by the sudden appearance of Sue Mundy. At the head of a gang of 13, says Despera. I'm not sure exactly. Desperados, maybe?
Maybe so, yeah.
Desperados. Okay, maybe it is Desperados. Okay. The two officers, finding resistance useless, immediately surrendered. Sue Mundy was surprised of the fact by one of Mr. Grigsby's daughters, who begged her to spare the lives of the two men. She replied by cursing her, told her she would be her own judge, at the same time walking up to Captain McCormick and shooting him through the head. She then shot Dr. Schreck through the breast. Both men died almost instantly. The gang then left in the direction of Bloomfield, where they have their headquarters. The citizens recognized among the scoundrels a man by the name of Turner from Bardstown, who was sent across the river some weeks ago to remain during the war. Now, I could read a little bit more of the article, but I guess that's a tip of the iceberg on Sue Mundy and some of the exploits or some of the crimes, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's definitely very within character of what Sue Mundy has been Mundy has been accused of doing. So yeah, it's that's a lot of the things that you hear about when you read about Sue Mundy is murdering people pretty much.
Cold-blooded. And another article, and this is very brief, it just says the female guerrilla who has been robbing and murdering in Kentucky is named Sue Mundy. Now this one was written it was in 1864 November, so about 3 months before the previous article, when you're kind of starting to get a bit more of I don't want to say I don't want to say more accurate descriptions, because I'm pretty sure they were probably coming out a lot all at the same time.
Yeah, the one account I've read is that Prentice was basically, the creator of Sue Mundy here, and was putting out so many articles that some of the other local Louisville papers were saying, don't know how much of this is actually true. How is this guy everywhere, or this woman, everywhere at once? And so, a lot of, I would love to go into each individual story and see if I can, cross-reference it with any other contemporary sources there, and just kind of see how much of these are true and how much aren't. Because, when you have a legend that's created, so much gets attached to that person probably didn't even do. I found a lot of that in my own research when it comes to John Morgan. When he first started raiding in Kentucky in 1862, his first real famous raid, there was, and then Rankin Johnson, who was, Stovepipe Johnson, was doing his stuff in Western Kentucky. The Evansville, Indiana newspapers were saying, it's Morgan coming through here. And it was like, Morgan's nowhere even near this area. Johnson was doing, and then they were pinning it on Morgan. And then once they figured out that Johnson is, this big guy, several months later, other guerrillas are doing things and pinning it on Johnson, and Johnson's down in Tennessee. So I think a lot of that starts to happen too with Sue Mundy, and a lot of things that are either true or not true or kind of true are getting attached anyway.
Yeah. How can she be in different places at different times?
Yeah.
Across the state or across half the state. I got another article here from the National Republican, and this one is in December 16th, 1864. So, I'm sure there's just plenty, as you said before, of just many, many, many articles on Sue Mundy. The she guerrilla, Sue Mundy, and some of her male consorts visited one day last week a small town in central Kentucky and went to the house of a man named John Weatherton, and without cause or provocation, murdered him in cold blood. Mr. Weatherton was trying to pacify the alarms of his wife, who was at the time sick and in a delicate condition, when Sue Mundy, with some 2 or 3 of her cowardly brigands?
That's probably brigands. I've seen that
brigands?
Word a lot with guerrilla stuff. Yeah.
Brigands rushed into the sick room and shot the unfortunate man down in the arms of his wife. They afterward went to the house of a man named Lee, and in cold blood murdered him by shooting some 3 or 4 bullets in his head and body. He had hid in a closet, but the ruffians hunted him up and killed him while crouching in his hiding place. When dragged from the closet, he was cold. He was cold of death, maybe. The reason they gave for killing Mr. Lee was that he fired on them when they dashed into town. Mr. Lee was a wagon maker by trade and a poor man. So obviously they did not take any consideration on somebody's status or not. They just were going and killing.
That seems to have been the trademark.
But that was the objective for sure. Well, what's funny too is as I'll read some of these articles, I would find the same account in different newspapers. You know, they would be the same, like talking about the same one. And I'm afraid. Here's a good one. Murder retaliation on Tuesday. Let me give you the date of this one. This is November 6th, 1864. And actually, let's look at the other one. November 2nd. Okay, this might be a good part of your point. This was November 2nd, and this other newspaper article is November 6th. All right, and the November 2nd one, do you remember where it was at?
I don't.
Bardstown. I think it might have been Bardstown.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so it was Bardstown. All right, well, I'll read it and we'll discuss in a minute. Murder retaliation. On Tuesday night, last Sue Mundy's gang of cutthroats surrounded the house of Mr. Harper, 2 miles south of Midway, made the old gentleman a prisoner, and without the slightest provocation, murdered their victim in the most cowardly and brutal manner. Mr. Harper was a Union man, and this was the only excuse the outlaws gave for the perpetration of the inhuman outrage. It does seem that Sue Mundy is lost to every womanly instinct, her heart wholly corrupted, and her nature banished. That does not look right, but it's an old newspaper. For she rejoices in acts of cold blood and every species of crime. On Wednesday, 4 guerrillas captured in Kentucky by order of General Burbridge were sent from the prison of Lexington under guard of a file of soldiers to Mr. Harper's residence near Midway, and there shot to death in retaliation for the murder committed on Tuesday night. We have not been furnished with the names of the men who were shot on Wednesday. So there you go, man. I mean, this is crazy. Not to say we told you so, but
it's almost makes Hatfield McCoy stuff look
a little tame, man. Yeah.
One guy gets killed, we'll take 4 guys to that spot and shoot him, and I wonder, like, do they leave him there, or do they? What do they do with the bodies? You know.
Well, so that was my thought though. If they were in Bardstown, and I don't know even where to begin on figuring out if this would be possible. If they're in Bardstown on the 2nd, and then in the south of Midway on the 6th, I guess that's about a 4-day. That's 4 days. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Could they make it there in a horse?
There was actually, I read something about one of the possible Sue Mundys, about, because they're saying, you know, something happened in one section of the state and then he turned up somewhere else, and they think that if he was switching out horses, then he could have made a pretty long journey. Yeah, because this particular person had a history of being a courier, and you know, was used to being quick and just get, you know, from A to B as quickly as possible. So I think it's possible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that may our theory may not be 100% yet, but we'll get there. All right. So this is another excerpt from. So this one is from the Burlington Weekly, but the article is an excerpt from the Louisville Democrat. All right. So retaliation: 4 men shot some 3 weeks since a party of guerrillas commanded by the notorious woman named Sue Mundy came within 1 mile of this city and then went back up the Bardstown Turnpike, robbing everyone they met. On the way, they captured a soldier with a Taunton Hospital mail and took the carrier off with them. At a point in the vicinity of Jeffersontown, they murdered him and left his body on the spot. where the deed was committed. An order was issued yesterday, but by whom we are unable to learn, that the 4 guerrillas be taken from the exchange barracks prison, and that they be taken to the scene where the murder was committed, and there shot to death in retaliation for the soldier who had met his death from the hands of Sue Mundy and her men. So there's another example. So it's 2 examples of Sue Mundy killing somebody in cold blood, and then turning around and Burbridge's order coming in effect and killing 4 Confederate guerrillas, adding up to 8 real quick. And those were within 2 days, basically, of each other. You got if Sue Mundy was in Bardstown on the 2nd, went up the turnpike towards Bardstown, up to Jeffersontown, which is right near Louisville, committed another crime. Then on to Midway, south of Midway, on the 5th. Man, that's a lot of running, a lot of killing, a lot of.
That is, yeah.
They are. Man, it's just a lot. Kind of a. Well, I mean, like we said, it's more than just. It's like the Wild West. They're just running around doing what they want. It doesn't. Hatfields and McCoys aren't holding much, or Jesse James even. Those people. I have another article, but it's pretty much the same one that I just read, and it talks just about the notorious woman named Sue Mundy, murdered a mail carrier, and then the retaliation as well. So you're getting just this constant situation, I guess, where Sue Mundy rolls in, attacks a unionist or so forth. The guerrillas come in, and then the executions happen. And it just goes to show you, I mean, this is not going to sit well with people. Obviously, people are probably not happy with the guerrillas, the Confederate guerrillas. But then on the flip side, they're probably not happy that people are just getting executed constantly either.
Right.
Of course, hindsight. I mean, I don't know what they should have done.
Oh, yeah.
I guess we could sit here and be like, you know what, they should all just been friends, man.
Yeah, and it's then you think about just the civilians. It's
trying to live their lives.
Yeah, it's like, how do you even? I guess you just try to keep your mouth shut as much as you can for your own safety, because you might have a guerrilla come up and kill you, or you might be mistaken for a guerrilla and get killed by authority. So it seems like a lose-lose situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, a very interesting thing I found in Johnson County, which is all the way in eastern Kentucky, Paintsville, that area. Well, I mean, Paintsville is in Johnson County, but their county leaders issued a no flag ordinance, as in you could not fly the Confederate flag, you could not fly the American flag, and if you were, you got fined I think it was like $50 or something like that, which was a bit more money than it is today.
Yeah.
And I'm sure tensions were high there, but tensions are really high here. They're running around killing anybody and everybody. Now, was there as many guerrillas in eastern Kentucky, or?
That's an area I haven't really researched a whole lot. I mean, I would think that there would be, even though I think the eastern part of the state is more heavily Union. You still had pockets of Confederate sympathizers. I mean, the Eastern 5th Kentucky Regiment that eventually gets added to the Orphan Brigade is they're all Eastern men, and they I think the other members of the Orphan Brigade from Central and the Bluegrass region and Western Kentucky, I think, call them the what's that route out there? The Seine Diggers, I think, that they're known for digging up this root, and they kind of use it as a derogatory term towards them at first, and because apparently all they do is dig up this root to eat or something, and that's kind of what they were playing at. But so yeah, they and then with Morgan in '64, he's actually in southwestern Virginia, and he goes through Pound Gap and that area to get back into Kentucky. So I think there's probably a lot of Confederate sympathizers, not as much as there are in other parts of the state, because and this isn't exactly part of the guerrillas here, but when Kirby Smith's army is moving up into Kentucky during the Kentucky campaign in 1862, right before the Battle of Richmond, this I think July, August, especially August 1862, they're going through that rough country from Cumberland Gap and going north they don't meet a lot of friendly faces, and
Yeah.
they're getting shot at a lot. This Confederate army is from Union guerrillas, I guess you could say. And while the soldiers say, this is, no one here likes us. The bluegrass region, people will start to be a little more friendly towards us. These mountain people, they really don't like us, and so it kind of just shows just how interesting Kentucky is this time period. But there are a few books on the Mountain War, and I think it probably could get pretty brutal at times too, just as brutal as the other events that we've been talking about. There's a pretty good movie that we actually watched it when I was in high school, and it's called Pharaoh's Army. Have you ever seen that movie before?
No.
It's it probably came out in the late '90s, but it's got Chris Cooper in it, so it's actually not a bad movie, and it's about these small group of Union soldiers. They're out foraging. If I remember correctly, they're from Cumberland Gap, and they come across this farm that is the man of the family. He's off in the Confederate Army, and this is eastern Kentucky, and so they're the forage and take their stuff, and they're talking about the neighbors, how that particular family, their daughter died, and the Union their Union neighbors dug up her body, and so it just goes from a Confederate family, and then something else happens in the movie where there's an old couple, a Unionists, and they're really old, and they're killed, and their house burned, and their bodies are thrown down the well. I mean, and the woman's only response is, they're Yankees, they deserved it. It's like, so I think these ideas that we've been talking about existed over there too, for sure.
Yeah. Maybe just not as not as publicized, I guess.
Yeah, and they get the big drama that gets turned into movies after the war. That's
very true. So, are we ready for our big reveal, which we've kind of hinted towards already? Sue Mundy was not a girl, was not a woman. Sue Mundy is not even real, right? So
yeah, most likely not even a real person.
Not even a real person.
Yeah.
That'll wrap it up for this episode on Sue Mundy. Thanks again, Derek, for joining us, and we'll talk a little bit more about Sue Mundy next week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.